Hello, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live, where we're going to talk about all things airlines with Jay Shabat, Skiff's Senior Analyst for this sector. So a little rundown of how things are going to go today. Jay's going to give you his overview, and then we're going for about a half an hour, and then we will take your questions and comments, of which we already got one that I'd like to show you right now before Jay comes up here. There we go. So everybody, you're in for a treat today. Jay, welcome, and thank you for joining us today and taking the time.
For joining, and thanks, Chris, for the kind comments there. I'll try to uphold my end of the bargain here and be the gold standard. So I'm going to talk today about just kind of give everybody an update on where we stand in the airline industry. It's actually a good time to have this discussion because we are entering third quarter earnings season. So a lot of new information is now coming out. We have two airlines so far that have reported. So one is Delta and one is EasyJet. You may have seen the results. You may have read about them in Airline Weekly. We discussed them a lot, even on the podcast that we do, that Ned and I do. Ned Russell, my colleague, who, by the way, is not here today only because he is traveling back from Istanbul. He is at the World Routes Conference, getting some great information from over the other side of the world there. So if you're wondering where Ned is, that's your answer. Now we only have two airlines that have gone so far for the third quarter. Now, I will say that November 1st, we will be holding, I hope to see a lot of you at our aviation forum in Fort Worth, Texas. And by then, it'll be an even better time to talk because we'll have a lot of airlines that have reported. So at that point, we'll pretty much have all the U.S. guys, and a lot of the European ones will start coming in. So yeah, hope to see all of you there. So I hope you can see the what I'm looking at here is the major themes as we sit here in October 2023. So I'm going to start this discussion. Always a good idea to start an airline discussion talking about fuel prices. The oil price today, does anybody have an idea of what the oil price is today? If you have an idea in your head, think about that. I haven't checked today, but I know on Friday, oil was $88 a barrel. That's WTI, $88 a barrel. So I just want to take you back a few years. 25 years, in fact. My first full year in the airline industry was 1998. And I know you're thinking, there's no way, look at this guy. He's so young looking and so handsome. Look, how is it 19? He's been in the airline industry for 25 years. But it's true. I bet 25 years, actually more than that, because I started as an intern, 1996. But 1998 was my first full year in the industry. And I don't know if anybody remembers, for those of you old enough, but at one point that year, the oil price hit $8 a barrel. So 88.8. You can get a sense of just the dramatic variation that you can have over time. And I know some of you might say, well, you have to adjust for inflation. Oil is not really 10 times more expensive than it was, 25 years ago. That's all true. But what is true is that in 1998, oil was very cheap and airlines were having a party. And that was a very, very good year for airlines. So the question now, as we fast forward to today, is $88 a barrel? Is that cheap? Is it expensive? Is it manageable? Is it uncomfortable? And I'll take you, and it would be very interesting. We don't have the time to do this, but it would be very interesting to kind of take you through the, the 2000s and the 2010s and how oil prices moved around and how that correlated with airline performance in different parts of the world. That's a very interesting discussion in itself. But let's, for now, just I'm going to take you to 2022, so last year. So midpoint last year, oil actually reached above $120 a barrel. Now, that was very uncomfortable for airlines and pretty much anywhere around the world. It was worse if you were in a country where your currency weakened versus the US dollar, because remember, everybody's paying for jet fuel in dollars. So if your currency weakened, it's even more expensive. So 2022 is a very, very difficult year on the fuel cost front. Now in 2023, it's been a much better situation. Fuel has dropped rather sharply. It's been going up since May, June. It's kind of been moving up, but still year over year today, oil prices, jet fuel prices are down year over year. So that's been a pretty good news story for the airline industry. So as we sit here today, October 2023, oil, not going to tell you airlines love where the price is. I'm not going to tell you it's, they're very comfortable, but it's manageable. I think it's for the most part manageable. What's less manageable right now is all the other costs. So you have a situation, and there are going to be exceptions here, but you have labor costs that have really been going, just rising far in excess of general inflation and far in excess of the ability for airlines to grow their revenue. So that's been very uncomfortable. And we certainly saw that in Delta's earnings. And Delta's not even, most of their labor force is non-union, but their pilots do have a union, and they negotiated a collective bargaining agreement. It's a very expensive one. You could pull up their income statement and their labor costs. You can see it right on the line item, just huge increase. So there's that. There's also increase in other non-fuel cost items, aircraft, airport cost, maintenance cost. The list goes on and on. So that has been uncomfortable. Now, I'm trying to be as global as possible as I give this presentation. Now, there are always exceptions. There are airlines that have done heavy restructurings during COVID. Some are even continue to do their restructurings today, and you'll see their labor costs are down. Thai Airways, some of these Philippine Airlines, Virgin Atlantic, they just do these really heavy restructurings. So there are exceptions, but I'm going to try to keep this as global as possible. So one, staying sort of on the cost / supply side, one very big theme, and at Skiff, we sometimes talk about mega trends. One very big mega trend in the airline industry right now is that the supply side of the industry is very constricted. Okay, it's very, airlines are not getting the planes they need. They're not getting the engines they need. They're not getting enough airport capacity. There's all sorts of problems with, Boeing and Airbus can't deliver planes on time. There are not enough air traffic controllers. That's a very severe problem on the East Coast of the U.S. right now. It's a pretty big problem in Europe too. So that has been a big issue. If you talk to any airline and about these, supply side shortages, you'll hear a lot of grumping and moaning and people complaining, and for good reason. I mean, there's no doubt that when Boeing doesn't deliver your 737 on time, your schedule plan just gets messed up. And, a lot of airlines depend on growth to lower their unit costs. It's just kind of it's the nature of the business is growth lowers your unit costs. It's, we could talk about why in another discussion, but that is just, cardinal principle of airline economics. And they're not able to do that if you can't get your planes on time, or if Pratt and Whitney's, engines are so, there's so many issues with them that you can't get the engines. And so there's a lot of, there's no question, there's a lot of headaches out there, and airlines mean it when they express their frustration. At the same time, I would like just everybody to consider that collectively, because the supply side is so constricted, we actually have a situation where the fares are higher than they otherwise would be. And that collectively is very good for airlines. So, you could make the argument that all of these supply side shocks, constraints, whatever you want to call them, actually a net positive for the industry. And we'll hear more about that as, airlines report in the coming. United is going to report tonight, and they're going to do their call tomorrow. We'll get more information, imminently. And then I think American goes this week as well, I believe. So we're going to start hearing airline executives comment on this, and we'll get a sense is on balance, is the supply side situation good or bad? So there's that. Now moving to the demand side, that's been pretty much all smiles, all happy times, because coming out of COVID, different regions experienced revival at a different pace. So I would say spring of 2022, US was already kind of rip roaring again. Europe, kind of same thing. For Asia, it took a lot longer. Asia really didn't open up until late 2022, and in China's case, early 2023. And they're still, in fact, the Chinese international market is still, in fact, very depressed. I mean, you could look at, just pull up any latest IATA numbers, and you'll see. I mean, it's a very, very large decrease versus where we were in 2019. So I have here on this slide here, in case you wanted, the Ultra LCC puzzle. What that refers to is, here we are, we're October 17th. So about a month ago, mid-September, Spirit and Frontier, they came out with an investor note that basically said, everything that we told you about a couple of weeks ago, last month, during our last quarter earnings, so forget about that. It's all wrong now. We completely didn't anticipate that everything just turned out so much worse than we expected. And, demand is bad, and we've got all these supply chain things are bad that I mentioned. So really, really, really pessimistic. But yet everybody else, I mean, United kind of gave their own investor update, and Alaska and American, and they all kind of said, hey, we're cool, everything's good. So it was kind of a big puzzle. And I think we're starting to starting to solve that puzzle now. I think Delta made very clear which parts of the market were doing well, which parts are not. The stuff that's doing very well continues to do very well. The premium market, the long haul international, I mean, US to Australia, you couldn't find a market that's, that's booming more right now. Even domestic first class, Delta said, like, they used to give those tickets away. Now people are buying them. So that's the stuff that the Spirits and the Frontiers of the world, they don't participate in that. So that's probably the explanation of the dichotomy. But we'll know certainly by, the Aviation Forum, we'll have quite a bit more information on that. So, so keep, that's just a brief overview. I talked a little bit more about the US there, but we certainly will have time for questions. I'm going to go another, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so, 15, we'll see. And then just start shooting questions at me, and we'll take it from there. And not just questions, by the way. Feel free. I want to hear your comments too on this stuff. Some of you are in positions where you have a window on this stuff. I'm always eager to hear what you have to say. So, okay, let's go to the next one. The next one's just for fun here. Okay, so what I did here was, this is from Cirium data, by the way, and it's seats. And I don't know if I think I forgot the label there, but it's seats. And what we're looking at here is seats this quarter, the total seats, versus the total seats pre-pandemic, so Q4 2019. So which airports of the top 100 in the world, I made 100 the cutoff, which airports are up the most since pre-pandemic, and which have lost the most seats? And I apologize, I was a little too lazy to write out the airport names there. But I think most of you on this call, I suspect, speak airlineese and can decipher the codes. If not, it's just a quick Google search, or feel free to ask. But I'll go through a couple of these. I mean, they're really interesting to go through all of them, but we don't have time for that. But I'll go through a few, and have your questions ready for me for any that I missed. But CAI, what's CAI? It's Cairo. It's Egypt's capital, Cairo, up 49%. And the question is why? Well, I would throw Cancun into that. Cancun up 45%. Very simple. These are two markets with a very heavy leisure component. And if you think about what's been booming since the pandemic, it's not business traffic, it's leisure traffic. And so these are markets that are just like perfectly placed, and airlines are just able to add a lot of seats and capture that demand. Now there are always, we can get into the specifics. There's some details about, why is Cairo ahead of Cancun, or why is one ahead of the other? Cairo, Cairo had one kind of quirk that Qatar Airways, there was an embargo on them. Egypt had an embargo on them, and they, back in 2019, that went away. So they're back in the market. That contributed to the addition of some additional seats. Cancun, there was a situation where Mexican Airlines, for safety reasons, weren't allowed, or for safety regulatory reasons, weren't allowed to grow to the U.S. So they threw a bunch of seats in their domestic market, so they'd fly, Mexico City, Cancun. But those are just details. The major point here being that these are leisure markets. Now, BNA, what's BNA is Nashville. A little bit of a leisure market. It's certainly a cool place to visit, but it's not Cancun. The reason there is just simply Nashville happens to be one of the superstar economies of the U.S. If you think the Austins and the Denvers and the Raleigh-Durhams, there's just a huge amount of population and economic growth there. So that explains that. And I promise you, I won't go through all these. I don't want to put you to sleep, but CSX is actually in China. It's Changsha, which is Hunan province in the south of China. Interesting, right? Because China, I just said earlier, is so depressed internationally relative to what it was before COVID. But domestic is very much, what's happened is all these Chinese airlines, well, you can't fly to the US anymore because there's all these restrictions. So what do you do with that 777? Well, you throw it into Changsha. There's nothing to do with it. So there's a lot of seats. I can't guarantee you that the actual passenger counts went up by 31%. Interesting enough, the load factors have been getting better. I think legitimately domestic airline demand, not just supply, has been pretty good in China. Starting to get pretty good. But again, that's something we'll get more information as the Chinese airlines report in probably a couple of weeks. You got a couple other Chinese. HAK is Haikou, that's in China. You got MCO, Orlando, Miami. There's your leisure markets again. LAS, Las Vegas is on there. Athens down at number 14, ATH. So it's nice to be if you're a leisure oriented economy or aviation market, these are good times. And let's hope that'll continue. Now on the other side, on kind of the loser end, we have SVO is Moscow. There's really no, I think most of you could figure that one out. It's not a big puzzle there. There's, we have the war that's still ongoing. So that they lost a lot of capacity. CTU is Chengdu. If I were to quiz you on this, why is Chengdu down? That would be a trick question. That'd be unfair because Chengdu actually opened another airport. So a lot of the traffic just migrated over there. So it's not that the Chengdu market. There's nothing wrong with the Chengdu market. It's just, and that's true of PEK, by the way, which is Beijing, another new airport opened in 2019. DMK is Bangkok, and you got HKG Hong Kong. One last one before I move on, I want to talk about, and that's MUC, which is Munich. So if you take out Russia, if you take out Asia, the one that's down the most is Munich. And that is symbolic of something larger that's going on in Germany. I mean, the whole German market is, outside of Asia, probably the least recovered major market in the world. Now, there's all sorts of reasons for that. That's an interesting topic by itself that we can discuss. But, if you think about it, it's not a tourist market for the most part. It's more a lot of business. It's also a market where a lot of low-cost carriers have left because of new taxes, new fees, et cetera, et cetera. So keep that in mind. Germany, not in a very good situation as far as now. Lufthansa is a good situation because they like to see all these low-cost carriers leave, but you can look at that from different angles. Okay, so what do I have next? Real quick one on aircraft orders. I just put this up there because I thought it was interesting. Who's got the most planes on order? So Indigo and Air India are the two kind of warring armies in India right now. Everything's kind of I mean, there are other airlines that exist, but those are kind of the two guerrillas that are battling each other. And they both have huge amounts of planes on order. I was actually listening to a presentation from an Indian online travel retailer this morning, and they were saying how they expect, or I think they were quoting the aviation transport ministry or whatever in India, they expect that traffic in India will double in 5 years. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what I read. In any case, you're seeing tremendous growth there. And as you can see from these aircraft orders, airlines are trying to capitalize on that. United is probably the most interesting one. And that's one also we could just have like a whole big discussion on. And I've had very, very interesting discussions on this. Is United ordering too many planes? And then sort of as a corollary to that, are the planes they're ordering too big, particularly on the narrow body side? So they plan on replacing 70-seat regional jets with 200 plus seat A321 neos, and they've got a whole bunch of MAX 10s on order. These are planes with 200 seats. So and they have their own justification, which some of you have read. We've written a lot about this in Airline Weekly. And so some of you have read kind of the different arguments that Ned and I have laid out. It may be something that comes up in the Q&A, but in any case, that is an interesting kind of, I don't know, philosophical question, if that's the word. And then, you see some others, some of the Southeast Asian airlines like Lion Air and AirAsia that they were really big orders, big, I used to like call them aircraft shopaholics before the pandemic. And they sorry, apologize. I was just looking. So they were, big aircraft buyers before the pandemic. And I think a lot of those planes may never wind up getting delivered. They're just still on the books. But there you have it. Wizz Air is on there, Southwest, Delta, Vietjet. Okay, so what I have here, the next slide, I'm not going to go through each and every one of these. That wasn't my intention. I just thought so at Airline Weekly, some of you may be familiar, but how we kind of break down the world. So if you look at like IATA does it a little differently, and ACI and different organizations will group regions differently. So, IATA might have like the Asia Pacific region. I think they have like 4 or 5 different regions. So the way we've always done it is we've divided the world into 10 pieces, 10 regions. And there you have them there: North America, Europe, Latin America, etc. I just, there's no wrong way to do it. I think that's kind of adds a little bit more specificity to some of these, like, Asia Pacific's just too big for me. There's too much going on in there. I'm not going to go through any of I'm not going to go, certainly not all of them. I probably maybe have about 5 minutes till we hit the half-hour mark. Maybe I'll just mention one. I mentioned, Europe, because it's just so interesting with the consolidation that's going on there. We have IAG is trying to buy a Spanish airline, Air Europa. Now, they already own one Spanish airline, that's Iberia. So it's questionable whether or not the regulators will allow. They're kind of begging and screaming and say, hey, look, if we buy Air Europa, we'll, all that money that Air Europa owes to the Spanish government, we'll repay it. And hey, by the way, you want some more Asian flights from Madrid? We'll make sure that happens. And on the other side, I think consumers are like, well, do we really need Madrid dominated by, both Iberia? And that's this kind of convenient competition there between those two. So as that's going on, you have Lufthansa trying to buy Alitalia's successor, ITA. They're involved in that. And then we had just a couple of weeks ago, SAS, Air France get involved with that. So they've got, they're going in for a fifth of SAS's equity with an option to take control after 2 years under certain conditions. Then you have TAP Air Portugal, which is the biggest one now, the biggest kind of independent that's in play. And everybody says they want it. Air France says, yeah, we're interested. Lufthansa says, yeah, we're interested. IAG says, yeah, we're interested. So that's one to keep an eye on. So I think I guess I should stop there. I believe I don't have any more slides. Yeah, right. So I'm going to stop there, open it for questions. If at any point we don't have any questions, we can certainly go back to those and talk. But
yeah, so Yeah,
Yes,
thanks,
Eric.
Jay, so much.
Mhm.
This is really fascinating. Get your questions in, everyone. As you can tell, Jay is just a fountain of knowledge here. So now's the time to ask. We are going to start with one about regional macro trends. Jay, this came in from a LinkedIn user. Any regional macro trends in the type of planes being purchased, narrow body versus wide body, in the U.S. versus Asia versus Europe? What say you?
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of narrow bodies and wide bodies, yeah. Well, I'll just speak, sort of generally at first. So the um, the wide body, the narrow body market right now, everybody wants narrow bodies, no matter where you are, any region, any of those 10 regions of the world, narrow bodies are in very, very high demand, and that's partially because they're really hard to get. I mentioned all those supply issues. Boeing and Airbus, they're so far behind on their production. And in addition, the demand is there, right? I mean, the demand is great. So everybody wants their, any region of the world. There's really no macro distinctions there. Now, I did mention India, they're ordering a lot more than anybody else. And, the US is going through a replacement cycle. I think you're going to see a lot of orders out of there. Now, as far as wide bodies, that's starting to come back too. Definitely a supply shortage. That was much slower to come back than the narrow bodies. So if we were having this conversation a year ago, I'd probably tell you, well, wide body's still weak, narrow body's already strong. Now the wide bodies are, also suffering from the supply chain issues. And also, international demand is coming back now too, not in every single market, but yeah. And remember too that, a lot of these planes, I mean, some of them are for replacement, some of them are for growth. But, when you replace a 787-9, when you use that instead of a, 777-200, I mean, you're getting a lot of efficiency. You're getting even better customer, features and everything like that. So there's a big compelling reason to buy these planes. So you're going to continue to see the demand there. I mean, really spread out across the world. I mean, you could talk about individual airlines. Why is Australia buying these super ultra long haul planes? I don't want to get too detailed, but in general, the market for aircraft. I mean, it's good to be, like I said, it's good to be Boeing and Airbus right now. It's not good in the sense that you're struggling, and every 5 minutes one of your suppliers is telling you, whoops, we messed up on, we got this thing wrong and we can't deliver this plane on time. Or like there was a big rail outage near Seattle. They couldn't get the planes to the factory, they couldn't get the fuselages to the factories. This is something we're seeing like every month. So again, frustrating, but at the same time, it's good to be Boeing and Airbus. I mean,
okay, so let's go to Chris's question. It's kind of a long one. So Jay, I'm going to have you kind of read it to the group. Maybe you can summarize a bit.
Okay, I'm just looking for it here. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, okay. Is it the one about the GTF engines?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay. So he asked Jay, with the increasing AOGs of the GTF equipped Neo 220s, E2s, etc. Okay. So Chris is, mentioning the Pratt and Whitney engines, which have had all sorts of problems. What overall effect will that happen on capacity and yields as it peaks in 2024? These numbers of AOGs are even more significant than the removal of max groundings, and those were in a much lower demand environment. Yeah, no, all great points. And sorry, I see the question popped up here. Yeah, no, all great points, Chris. That is a very serious supply issue, and in many ways, like you suggested, even worse than the max grounding, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was. So yeah, that is, and I don't, hear airlines say that that's going to be fixed anytime soon. You mentioned, peaks in 2024, perhaps. But I think, perhaps we're still talking about, if not this specific issue, engine issues in general, beyond 24. So yeah, it's something that airlines are going to have to, I almost said deal with, which yes, they're going to have to deal with it, but they're going to benefit it from too. Like, as I suggested before, it's going to put a floor on yields across the industry. I mean, it's very nice when your competitor can't, you know, I mean, you think in the US, I mean, Spirit Airlines is an example of an airline that's just getting crushed by this GTF issue. And, an airline, think of a competitor, whether you're American, whatever, flying into Florida. It's nice that they can't throw more capacity onto your routes anymore. So, there's the both sides of that. So yeah, hope I answered your question, Chris.
All right, so we've got one from Seth, and he's curious about fares. He wants to know who's right, Delta or Frontier, and are U.S. yields going to rise or fall?
Okay, so I'm going to start with an anecdote. So last night I booked a ticket on Frontier to Florida, peak season. Okay, the first week in March. This is like the peak of the peak of the peak. $77 round trip. So
wow,
I think that answers.
I got to buy some tickets too. I got to send my kid to go fishing with his grandpa in Florida in March. So
you may be in luck. Sarah. Yeah, your family may be in luck because tickets. Yeah. So and that's not all markets on all dates and things like that. But in general, I think I just answered your first question, Seth. That Frontier is correct, but I wouldn't say that they're right versus Delta. I could say they're both right. I think it's true that Frontier is a Florida specialist. I mean, they do a lot of Denver too. They do, but they're leisure markets, and I think they're really suffering right now. I think they're and again, we'll get a lot more visibility into this when Frontier and Spirit report in the next, I don't know if it's next week or 2 weeks. So this is, we're still, the last real data that we had, the hard data that we had on this was when they did their second quarter earnings. And that's, it's been a month now. So, or more than a month, is whatever it's been, it's been a while since the summers. So some of this, what I'm saying is a little bit conjecture, but that's Frontier. But Delta is also right that the fares are holding up. I mean, try booking a ticket to Europe this winter. It's still very expensive. You want to go, I mentioned US, Australia before. I bet you the fares aren't down. I haven't checked, but I'm willing to bet you the fares aren't down on that. So I think now, whenever we talk about fuels, I don't want to take up too much of the question time here, but whenever you talk about fuels, I just want everybody to keep in mind that fuel prices do play they have a big factor. Yes, it's supply. Yes, it's demand. But what tends to happen is if fuel spikes, and it has been, like I said, it's still down year over year, but it has been going up. We have this Middle East situation too, which may have an impact on oil price. Hasn't really much yet, but that could play a factor. When fuel prices go up over time, what tends to happen is airfares will go up and vice versa. So, if you wanted a very good deal on an airfare, 2016 was a great time because oil prices had just crashed. Whereas conversely, like, 2022, when oil was running over 120 a barrel, there was a lot of upward pressure on fares. So I think you can both be right. I think Delta and Frontier can both be right. Just depends on the market.
So Mohammed has a question about your predictions about airline orders and stock demands. When are those going to have an impact on airline stock prices?
Predictions on airplane orders.
Get out your 8-ball.
Okay, and current demand. Well, on airlines. Okay, well, stock prices. I want to stay away from that. I have no idea. I think there's probably 99% of the people on this call have a better idea of where airline stock prices are going than me. I mean, if you can tell me what the oil price is going to be tomorrow, I'll tell you what the stock price is going to do. But without knowing that, I'm going to stay away from that. But as far as the orders, I'm just going to go back, Mohammed. I mean, it's a good question. I think it's the same thing I said earlier. I think there is a very robust demand for aircraft for a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, I mentioned that demand has been very strong. There's a replacement need for a lot of airlines. And don't forget too, when you buy a new plane, you're getting better economics. You're getting better fuel burn. You're getting, lower maintenance cost. You're also, and many times you're getting better range too. So that opens up, a 7879 can do more routes than, an older 777 can do. You just have more capabilities. So more functionality. So Boeing and Airbus will have no problem continuing to garner orders. There's some kind of big recession, you may see a dip, but I don't think there's too much of a concern from the manufacturers that demand's going to be weak. I think, and there's only two of them, so only two main players.
So we've got about just over 5 minutes left. So if you have a question, please throw it in the chat. Happy to ask Jay. Right now, we're going to go to another LinkedIn user who asks, what is your view on forecast RPKs and the RPBs for 2024? Better or worse than 2023?
Yeah, just just kind of same thing with the stock prices. We don't do forecasts at Airline Weekly. So I'm just giving you my not running any econometric models here. I'm just kind of giving you my hunch. Now, I don't want to be, I'm going to annoy you by saying this, and everybody's going to get annoyed. But I'm going to do that caveat again and say, well, if you tell me that oil prices are going to be $20 a barrel, I'm going to tell you that RPKs are going to be explosive. It's going to be huge growth. So there is that factor too. Now, I think in general, if the economy holds pretty, different economies are performing. We have the U.S. economy that's holding up rather well. We have the Chinese economy that's not doing so well. So there's different, that's another big wild card, big X factor. But in general, I think in terms of what you're asking about RPK, so that's traffic. In general, I think I think we should still see growth. One driver, I could give you a couple of drivers of what may deliver some growth. One is that you have to believe that Chinese international will come back. Maybe not to the same level as it was in 2019, but if the U.S. and China stop arguing and they allow a few more flights, you get to some degree back to normal there. You also have trying to think, tourism should grow in places like Southeast Asia. They're expecting a lot of tourism growth. So it's not. I know it's kind of a very loose answer, but as of right now, there's really no reason to believe that we're headed for traffic to shrink. Yeah. Now in the steady state, I mean, if like everything else in the world being equal, you're going to have growth because, the number of people in the world grows every year and the economy grows a little bit a year. So kind of the, sort of the steady state is that you're going to get some growth.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Allison McDermott. Her question this is about kind of smaller airlines. With the current battle that JSX Airline is facing from the big airlines, do you see smaller private-like experiences having to go away due to pricing and space at airports?
Yeah, and sorry, Allison, I apologize that I'm not really going to be able to answer that question because we don't really follow that space, sort of the charter / those very small jets. So I'm not an expert on that. Now, I know my colleague Ned has written about that in the past. So I promise that I will ask him, and maybe if you shoot us email, we can get an answer to you. But I don't want to give you an answer on something I'm not an expert in. And I think I saw some questions here too. Oh, Seth was asking about NDC. That's another thing too. I mean, I can share a few thoughts on that, but that's one where I don't think my opinion's, really going to be that valuable to anybody. I think it's something, and NDC just refers to this new distribution model that airlines have been working on for, it's been 2 decades now or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's something that airlines really, will find useful. I think are finding useful. And I'm just reading your question out in detail, Seth. Sales team focus on these initiatives. Are we going to see more direct sales focus? Airlines still be holding the GDS? Yeah, I mean, it does seem like the GDS is still, kind of here to stay. But again, that's not like a super expert opinion. But yeah, I mean, airlines are obviously they're pushing very hard for the direct sales. They don't mind working with the GDS as long as it's on their own terms. But to them, the most important thing is to have that direct relationship with the customer so that they can, sell them a bunch of ancillary junk. And that's too harsh. But I mean, just know your customer so that, you can reward them and the loyalty. They don't like to have that GDS in the middle. So NDC is kind of IATA's way, or the airline industry's way, of kind of disintermediating them. But that doesn't mean they want the GDS to disappear totally. Okay. And again, my views on that are maybe not up to date, but.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jay. This has been a fascinating conversation. Obviously, we have a ton of airline experts listening right now with some very specific and interesting questions. So here's a reminder for all of you watching. We have a Skift Airline Forum coming up on November 1st in Texas. I hope to see all of you there. Jay and I are going to be there. So come and say hello. And that's it for today. Jay, thank you so much. And
yes. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Listening.